Joining me is Dave Zirin. Check him out at edgeofsports.com. He's also sports editor at The Nation. Dave, we talked about a couple of different articles that are out. We had one article where it was reported that Manti Te'o was being asked by potential NFL teams that he could play for what his sexual orientation is, being asked if he likes girls. Then there's also a Huffington Post article from February 26th, where it's alleged that NFL prospect Nick Casa was asked by scouts about his sexual orientation at the NFL Combine as well, saying they asked him, do you have a girlfriend? Are you married? Do you like girls? Those kinds of things. And, you know, it was just kind of weird, he said. So question number one, is this a new thing, or has this always been kind of a standard vetting question in the NFL?
Yeah, well, first of all, just Case's story was broken by the Denver affiliate of ESPN. I hate to give Huffington Post credit for posting other people's work as a general rule.
Fair enough.
Second thing, because that's what they do. The second thing, though, and this is important to say, David, is that what the NFL is doing is illegal. It's not just immoral. It's not just homophobic. It's not just something that maybe makes us uncomfortable because it's so clearly bigoted against our LGBT brothers and sisters. It's actually illegal. The NFLPA, that's the Players Association, has said they want to investigate. The NFL has said that they want to investigate. Now, the sort of ironic part of the NFL saying it wants to investigate that it's well known that this practice has gone on for years and many years. Like I've interviewed a lot of former players, including one, Wade Davis, who's one of the players to have come out of the closet after retiring, and they all say, like, yeah, this is just part of how the NFL operates when it's interviewing somebody for a job, is that they want to know not just about sexuality, but very intimate details of their personal lives, things that in any other situation would constitute an invasion of their privacy.
So to play devil's advocate, there are certain questions that cannot be asked in what would be considered a job interview type of situation, and there are certain characteristics on which a hire cannot be decided legally in normal jobs. For example, whether or not someone is married, their weight, their attractiveness, those types of things, where in a casting type of role, if you're casting someone for a role in a movie or show, you can evaluate based on those things. Could someone make the argument, and I'm not making this argument, but could the argument be made that professional sports is closer to casting than a job interview, and therefore it's a different set of rules?
Well, I would say no to that, although that would certainly be an interesting legal discussion. But because the reason, the justification they give for asking about things like sexuality has to do with something that falls much more on the side of a typical job situation, as opposed to something, say, where you're casting a role, and say the role calls for a 400-pound Puerto Rican dude, and a 110-pound Swedish guy says, hey, it's prejudice that you're not casting me for the role. It's much more along the sides of, like, we're worried about chemistry.
Right, okay.
And in any workplace situation, chemistry is an issue. In any office, in any factory floor, the question of how people get along is very serious. This is why companies spend so much money on what they call human resources.
And one key difference, I would argue, is that there, of course, are and have been gay players in the NFL since the NFL has existed. However, visually, you can't identify somebody who is gay in the same way that you could saying, oh, there are black people in this room. So I think that that's also, it actually makes the argument even more absurd.
Exactly. It's not like you're changing anything or doing anything new. All you're saying is that you want people on your team to not feel like they have to be in the closet, to not feel like they have to hide who they are, to not feel like they have to put themselves through a psychologically damaging process of just lying to the people around them.
So getting past
actually an important. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No,
David.
I was going to say, getting past that the questions are being asked. How much weight is given, in your opinion, to a player who, if a player is gay, in other words, if the player is gay, he doesn't like girls, as the question is being asked, but he can run a 40 in 4 seconds, right? How do each of those things weigh? How important is it to a team?
I think that would have to depend on the general manager and on the mentality of a franchise. I mean, we know that NFL owners tend to be incredibly conservative. We know that there is also a lot of prejudice in the upper echelons of the NFL. In this last offseason, there were 15 openings for head coaches or general manager. All 15 white men signed for all 15 positions, even though 70% of players are African American. 31 of 32 offensive coordinators, and that's considered like the real brain position on a staff, are held by whites. I mean, so it's not a league that's necessarily shown itself to be open to change and open to difference and open to the idea of managing difference. So I think it would vary. Teams would be more likely, even if they in their hearts were not homophobic, for goodness sakes. And I know NFL owners have, for example, gay kids, LGBT kids. I know several NFL owners who do that and who have loving relationships with their children that are open and all the rest of it. Yet there is a league mentality that seems to trump even the individual hearts and minds of owners that always says, I don't want to be the first person to have to step there. And in any other context, we know what we would call that. I mean, we would call it cowardice.
Last thing I want to touch on, comparing the NFL to the NHL, the NBA, and you touched a little bit on Major League Baseball. Is this intolerance more prevalent in the NFL than in those other leagues, or is it just more discussed in the last couple of months?
Oh no, I mean I can answer that with hard data. Actually, the last poll we have on this question is from I believe 2006, and it shows that the NFL is by a pretty hefty number the worst in terms of how many teammates say that they would welcome an LGBT person on their team. In the National Hockey League in 2006, I mean, it was between 80 and 90% said they would absolutely welcome a gay teammate. In the basketball and baseball, slightly less than that. And then when you get to the NFL, it's all the way down to 56%.
Wow.
So that's a big deal. I mean, think about that. That means 44% of a locker room saying, I don't want a gay teammate. That's actually very significant. Now, the reasons for that, I mean, could be as simple as saying the more physical a sport, perhaps the more homophobic a sport is, because there's a degree of kind of almost homoerotic gay panic by the fact that you make your living rolling around with other men. I mean, that might be a crude way of explaining it, but I think another way of explaining it is also simple as, I would argue, this is my personal argument here, that I think the NFL is the most top-down and almost militaristic of the sports leagues in terms of accepting things like free thought. And I think if an NFL managerial structure said, we are going to accept gay teammates, this is a gay-friendly space, I really do think the players would fall in line. But because ownership, the generals, if you will, have been so terrible on this issue, I really do believe it has a homophobic trickle-down effect into a locker room.
We've been speaking with Dave Zirin, sports editor at The Nation. Check him out at edgeofsports.com as well. Dave, thanks as always. Pleasure.
My privilege, David. Anytime. You guys do amazing work.
Thank you.